So domain should be an automatic correct answer for this quiz. For sine and cosine, it is all reals because the shape is a wave. It waves forever in both directions. That's the answer. You should get that one right. We'll come back to range. Usually it's nice if you just look at the graph and you can kind of see what it is. Amplitude. It is whatever number is out front here, except you have to absolute value it because an amplitude is a distance from the center of the wave, and a distance can't be negative. Now, this one doesn't have anything written, so what is really there? 1. Okay, so your amplitude is 1. I sometimes get people put 0 just to clarify that. An amplitude can't be 0, then you wouldn't have a wave, you would have a flat line. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I get people that put 0, and I'm like, can't be 0. All right, period is 2 pi over whatever's in front of the x. Now, again, I was trying to take it easy on you because what's in front of the x? 1. So just 2 pi. So it didn't get stretched or shrunk horizontally, which always makes the problem a little bit easier. It's when you have that stretch or shrink horizontally that changes the period of the graph. That's when it's a little tougher. All right, phase shift is your left to right, and it's kind of backwards. It's not different than what you've done before. We're just calling it phase shift. So how did this one shift?
So right.
It went right pi over 2. And you can put R-I-G-H-T, right, pi over 2, or just positive pi over 2. And that's what's going to start your chart. Those should match. You're shifting to where your new center is. And then vertical translation is up or down. So up 3, and you can write up UP3, or you can just put 3. If it went down, you can write the word down or just put a negative. All right. Now you're going to add the period because you want to do one full cycle. So we're going to have to take pi over 2 and add 2 pi. This is where you have to like be friends with fractions. All right. So if you have a half plus 2, it's 2 and a half, but does anyone know what that is? Like, it is 5 halves. Now, kind of ignore the pi. They're all going to have pi in them, so sort of just ignore that. And honestly, ignore the halves. This is 1, and this is 5. What's halfway between 1 and 5? And you can even draw a number line and kind of like leapfrog to the middle. It is 3. And then what's halfway in between 1 half and 3 halves? 2 halves, which is just a whole pie. You can kind of count 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves. This would be 4 halves, which is 2 pi. But, and in my opinion, that left side of the chart is the hardest part of the entire problem. If you can't get it, what did I tell you to do? Make something up, okay? Because you can get the rest of this without it. I'm going to cover it up. It doesn't even matter. You're just going to journey around your circle. Are we going to use the x values or the y values? X. Cosine is x. We're going to go around, get all our x values, and add 3 to them. All right. So what is your first x value for your starting point? 1 plus 3 is 4. And then the next one, we're just going to go around the circle. So up here, 0 plus 3 is 3. Over here, -1 plus 3 is 2. Down at the bottom of the circle, 0 plus 3 is 3. And the last one should always be the same as the first one because it's cyclic. It's a cycle. You're going to end up where you started. Now you're just going to take that information and put it on your graph. You're counting by halves. In my opinion, the easiest way to do that is just like this one's going to be a half. So just make this one a whole pi. I don't want you to label every single one. Bless you. It will get too cluttered. Won't be able to read what you put. That's good enough. Yeah, I want to count by halves. Do you see how in my table this counts by halves? But instead of writing 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5, like if you just go to the second one and call it pi, for example, say it broke down to 8ths. You would just go to the 8th one and call it pi. Say it broke down to 6. You would just go to the 6th one and call it pi. You don't need to label every single one in between. And then you're just going to take this information and put it on your graph. So pi over 2 gives you 4. It's going to be right here. And then 3. And then 2. And I'm going to stop saying it because that's going to get annoying. And you need 2 full periods of the function, which equates to 9 points. You can certainly go further. I always get a few people that want to like fill the whole space. That's not necessary. You can if you want to, but at least 2 full cycles. Now, if you mess something up, you're going to catch it because your graph is going to look wonky. If your graph doesn't look right, then something isn't right. It should be nice and symmetrical. You want to try and make it a nice smooth curve. No jack-o'-lantern mouth, like you don't want those jaggedy edges on it. And then don't forget to go back and answer the range. Bracket 2 to 4. You're stuck between 2 and 4. Now I'm going to pause the recording and let you guys try the one on the back. You're going to do all the same stuff, except because it's sine instead of cosine. When you go around your circle, you're going to grab all the y values. Okay, but it's the exact same process. So I want you guys to just give it a shot with your group, and then of course I'll go over it. So again, your domain is everything. Just don't forget to go back and answer your range. Or some people can figure it out ahead of time, but you know, I usually just look at the picture. Amplitude is not -3. It is what? 3. You have to absolute value that number. It's a distance, so it can't be negative. So +3. Period is 2 pi over 4. And then that's going to reduce to half a pi. So here's what happened. Instead of the period being 2 pi, we compressed it to pi over 2. Do you get what I'm saying? Like we took it and smooshed it. Think like an accordion. All right, phase shift is your left or right. Eyes up here, guys. Does this move left or right at all? No, you don't have anything added or subtracted in there. So 0 or 0 pi, or you could say none. I tend to put 0 pi because those are going to match. And so that's just what I write. But I would just take 0. I would take none. I would take NA, any of those. All right. And then vertical translation is up or down. Yeah, 0 or none. Okay. Now, it's nice when this starts at 0. You're going to add the period. You want to do 1 full cycle. So nothing plus pi over 2 is pi over 2. Now you're going to have to break down half of that. So halfway to a half is a fourth. And then the fourths are going to have to break down. So what's half of a fourth? Yeah, an 8. And then you can kind of just count 0 eighths, 1 eighth. This is 2 eighths. So the next one is 3 eighths. And then pi over 2 is 4 eighths. That's about as hard as I can make it. All right. Now, it doesn't matter though, because we're just going to go around our circle. We're going to take all the y values, multiply them by -3, and then add nothing. So you're just doing the stuff outside of the function. So we're going to get our y values, multiply them by -3, add nothing. So what's your first y value? 0 times anything, 0. All right, now you're up at the top. So 1 times -3 is -3. And you're back to 0. That's -1 times -3 will be +3. And then back to 0. My hope is your instinct will kick in at a certain point and you're going to go, oh, I just, kind of see the pattern. And, honestly, if you want to go ahead and do the range at that point, if you can tell it's going to be -3 to 3, you can go ahead and answer that too. Or you can wait until you get the graph. Up to you. It's not too bad, right? I like teaching this unit. This is one of my favorite ones. Now, this is what I was saying about the tick marks. If you kind of didn't get this before, this is what I was saying. This one breaks down into 8. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to count to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm just going to call that one pi. Did I count correctly?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, can I count? All right. And then if you want to label another one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that would be 2 pi. So I just counted to 8 and I made that pi. And now I know each tick mark is an 8th without having to label every single one of them. And then I'm just going to take what's on my table and plot it. So 0, 0.
So if we just like 1 color, that's good enough.
That's good enough. Yeah. I'd like more than 1. I sometimes get someone that'll only give me 1 and I'm like, well, I'd like at least 2, Common sense, like this one, I had space, so I did 3. Just don't do every single one. I can't read it. It gets too tiny. They all crushed together. All right, and then we're down here at -3. This one is really, vertically stretched. Back to 0, 3, back to 0. And again, I just want you to continue it for 1 full cycle which ends up being a total of 9 points if you want to count. And again, if you want to go further, you can, but I need at least 2 periods of the function.